Hi, I'm Joe Baker. Welcome back to Windshiel Farm for the third and final episode of the FAS Resilience Vlog. You join us here today on a very sunny day, which seems to be the theme for all three of these videos. However, I can reassure you that it's been a very wet autumn so far. October there's 145mm of rain, followed by November and December with 200mm of rain. So it has been a very challenging autumn, and you know, when we first started these videos we were looking at resilience to drought. However, I think the bigger picture, you know, it's about being resilient across all weather patterns at the moment. So yeah, this year, for instance, we'd usually shut the cattle on this Photocrop field. We made the decision this year to keep both lots of cattle with a grass run back, and they've been fed on the grass, giving them more of a dry place to lie when we've had the wetter weather. Now we could lock them on here if we wanted, however at the moment it's working quite well. In this field is one of the Photocrop fields for the cattle. It's a mixture of rape, turnips and kale. It was planted in the middle of July and we started grazing in November. I hope that this field will last another month, maybe a month and a half anyway, and then the cattle in February will get split and go on to some deferred grazing and a final field of Photocrop for calving. The Photocrop, with it being three different, with it being a mix and being kale, rape and turnips, it means that it gives us a much more diverse species, and it's more resilient to different weather conditions. So for instance, some of the little turnips in there, you know, might get hit with the frost more. However, the rape that's standing tall will survive the frost much better, so it keeps us with some dry matter there for the cattle to eat. In this group, all 60 suckler cows are in this group, and they're getting 2 to 3 metres a day in this strip, plus they're on ad-lib silage or straw. So once the cattle have finished on this Photocrop, they're going to be split into two groups, and one group's going to go onto the deferred grazing, which we direct drilled some rye into back in early spring. But it's been a good experiment and it worked really well and competed well with the grass early on in the year, and the sheep grazed it 3 times whilst it was growing. At the moment I'm feeling that the rye isn't adding anything to the deferred grass which these cattle will go onto, and I will experiment with that again this year to confirm these things. But the deferred grass will be used for the cattle whilst calving and hopefully last them through February, March and into early April before being ploughed out. The plan for next year's wintering of cattle is to keep going with the deferred grazing and up the acreage of deferred grazing to Photocrop. We're still not going to be totally away from Photocrop next year, as we're just building this back to a full grass-based system as we go. The Lucerne trial was grazed in the back end with lambs, and since then it's been shut up. At the moment the Lucerne is sitting dormant, and hopefully in the spring it'll come away and we'll cut that for silage. But the real test will be whether it comes in the spring or not, to whether we do that again. Since 2018 we've been rotationally grazing here at Windshiel, and over the years we've been learning every year. Last year we saw big improvements in the cattle side of thing and going into some bigger covers. I think what we've learned and or what we're trying to achieve going forward for next year is potentially to do more of a leader-follower system, so that the sheep are picking the best out of the paddock and then following up by the cows, and hopefully that'll help us manage the grass quality better, and get a better performance, but also like get a longer rest period in paddocks, because that's a big help with resilience. The sheep in the autumn rotated on grass until about December time, and then they were put onto sacrifice fields and started on hay. They're fed hay right up until Christmas, just after Christmas, before we started on the Wholecrop, which you saw in the first video. They are now on Wholecrop, ad-lib Wholecrop, and they will be right through until March. and the plan is for them in early March is to go onto their grass for lambing time in April. And things we learned from last year on the farm is that, you know, diversity in cropping on the farm, whether it be in grass mixes or different crops on the farm, different species, gives you a lot more resilience for drought or for a winter feeding system. So by keeping multi-species swards and diverse crops, it's definitely enabled us to cope with the conditions. Our biggest achievement on the farm last year was winning Sheep Farm of the Year in the Scottish Farming Awards. That was a real privilege to be involved in the competition, and we were very proud to pick up the winning award.